Houston, we have a problem.
I feel the need for speed. Ow!
My mom always said life was like a box of chocolates.
Help me help you.
You are a boy!
My team is dead!
There's no crying in baseball!
Relax. This pod is making you aggressive.
Wilson!
You complete me.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of We Bought a Mic, a podcast about movies, television, music, and Bubba Gump Shrimp Company. Woo! Sponsor of today's episode. In spirit, we wish that we were drowning in their delicious meal of actually, I don't think I've ever been to Bubba Gump. I don't know what I could pull.
I don't want to be sponsored by Bubba Gump because we might do some slandering of Bubba Gump's establishment either on this episode or on a future episode, or we just eat everything on the Bubba Gump shrimp menu. It all sucks. It all is like, it's like the Applebee's of seafood.
Welcome.
Or
My name's Ernest.
Cafe. You know, Mama always said, life is like a box of podcasts. You never know which one you're going to listen to. I can't do a Gump. See, the thing is that, like, if I do a good, I started to practice my Gump, and I was like, this sounds offensive. And so I won't. My name is Hunter.
Yeah, I'm Drew. My girlfriend really wasn't into I felt bad too. Yeah, but like when I did it around her, she was like, no.
It's so much. It's slower than you expect it to be. You really gotta sit on some of the words.
And joining us today is a very special guest. Welcome back, Collin Goode.
Thank you for having me on. I'm dialing in from Greenbow, Alabama, which is where I was born and raised.
Oh, good. You're returning home to the farmhouse.
Never left.
So this one was owned by the KKK ancestor?
Yeah, I'm not sure who I'm named after, and I'm going to leave it at that.
Welcome back, man. It's been a minute since we had you on, Collin, since Jack, the infamous Jack, which is for some reason one of the most widely watched reviews we've done on the YouTube version of this podcast. I think it has now been surpassed, but congrats on that victory and multiple other victories with our fantasy film league and our summer movie wager. You're just drowning in riches, Collin.
Thank you. It's good to feel like a king. And, you know, Hunter let me in on Gump quite a long time ago, the Tom v. Tom series. He like leaked it to me. He was like, I'll let you know. And he was like, I'm going to let you get first pick.
I teed it off to you, expecting you to take a different Gump movie, an animated Gump movie that we have not covered yet in this podcast. Because I know about your allegiances to that. But also, like, I know that you have an image to uphold, and that's like, what is the most simpleton film that you're recording for each podcast series? That's the one.
Oh, yeah, from Jack to Gump.
From Jack to Gump.
There's some connective tissue between my picks when it comes to these movie stars. And I was thinking of all the Hanks and Cruise movies, so many wonderful, wonderful movies. And I thought, I gotta take Gump. It's the big one.
Yeah, exactly.
The big guy.
And now, Collin, you are truly someone that I would say, like, you have very discerning taste and very specific taste, like among all my friends. And when I got on Letterboxd and saw that you had given Gump 5 stars, I was a little bit shocked.
You also gave Jack 5 stars.
Okay, all right. I'll be honest,
we talked about this when we did Jack.
All right, the Jack 5 stars, that was a bit of a joke, but the Forrest Gump 5-star isn't. And I have quite the history with Gump that I want to share at some point in this pod. Me and Gump, we go way back.
We'll get to that in a second. I need to introduce the series. It's Tom v. Tom, A Tale of Two Toms. Cruisemas with the Hanks is the full title for this Double Tom series. And yeah, Forrest Gump is the movie today, winner of the Academy Award for Best Picture. Was it the highest grossing movie of 1994 as well?
I think it was second to maybe The Lion King.
Yes, I think you're right.
Yes, yep, that's right. It was up until like the last couple years, it was the highest grossing Paramount movie ever.
Wow. Yeah. That's nuts.
Which is like insane. That's bigger than any Mission Impossible, any Tom Cruise movie, since Paramount makes most Tom Cruise movies. Bigger than a lot of the Transformer movies. Like, yeah.
Back when a drama could be a blockbuster.
So yeah, it's like you said, it's the big one. I think, you know, this series has been ramping up for a minute. I think this might be officially the halfway point of the series. So it's a bit of a turning point. And we've been tracking these two Toms in their rise and now like kind of domination of the 90s. And we've covered some big movies. Like Big is a big movie, I would say. Top Gun is big. Rain Man, obviously, that one also won Best Picture. I would even put like Born on the 4th of July up there, even though that movie's not as widely talked about as Forrest Gump. I think it's, you know, on a similar stage there with the Oscar nominations and stuff. But Gump is seismic. It's Tom Hanks' second Oscar in a row. So he wins Philadelphia, and then they give him this Best Actor trophy literally the year right after. So it is this confirmation of the domination. It is we are here. We have arrived. Tom Hanks is the most powerful movie star in Hollywood. He can do anything. He can be Forrest Gump.
Yeah. So that goes into something that it's something that I was thinking about while watching this movie. And I feel pretty comfortable saying this, that like, for better or worse, no matter what you think about Forrest Gump as a movie, because we'll talk about that specifically, there's an argument that this is the most like culturally important movie of the last 30 years. Like, arguably no movie has permeated pop culture in the way that Forrest Gump has, with all of the various like moments and the quotes and the characters of Bubba and Lieutenant Dan and Jenny and everything else that have just like entered the lexicon in such a way that like film guys know it, but also like you're like third uncle who you never talk to is just like, stupid is as stupid does. Like, everybody knows this movie. Everybody has a relationship with this movie in a way that nothing else has ever had that much of an impact. Regardless of box office.
It's almost a like a representation of what a movie is. Like, if you looked up the word movie in the dictionary, it would probably show a still from Forrest Gump. Like, it just completely removed from the quality of the movie. It has been like sucked into the culture as just like one of the more prominent examples of like what this art form is, right? And it's so weird that the question of whether or not this movie is good is kind of like removed from that fact, from that idea of just how culturally significant Forrest Gump is. But I want to go to you, Collin. I don't want to jump over your segue earlier too much beyond what we already did. Tell us your backstory of this movie. Like, what was the reasoning, aside from everything we've already touched on, for picking it?
All right. So have you ever played the game, what movie was number one at the box office when I was born? Or
for the year?
Born? Yeah.
For that weekend, like your actual birthday. Ooh, that's interesting.
Yeah, so look it up. It'd be interesting to hear everyone's. But mine was Forrest Gump. This movie came out the day before I was born.
Wow.
That's a great one.
As I was born into this world, my first memory was hearing like the medical staff in the hospital being like, "Oh my God, did you see Gump? So good." So that's a fun little tidbit, that it came out basically the same time I was brought onto this planet. But it's also like, I'm pretty sure it's just the first like drama that I ever watched. And it kind of comes back to what you said, Ernest, that this movie kind of does everything. And it kind of introduced me to like what everything could be in a movie. It can make you laugh, cry. It can be about war. It can be historical. It can have memorable characters. It can have movie stars like Tom Hanks. They can be directed by, Robert Zemeckis. I don't think I knew who he was at the time, but it just holds a special place in my heart. And like the movie's just so ingrained into my brain that when I rewatched it last week, I was like, man, I don't think I ever need to watch this again, because I just remember every single scene and every single line of dialogue. It's just completely ingrained.
But isn't that so funny that like we all, I'm sure, were introduced to this movie really young as we were kids, and like this movie's like kind of weirdly dark, like especially everything that's happening with Jenny is like so dark and depressing. And like when you're watching this as a kid, I don't know how you would even be able to understand like 3/4 of the references that are being made to things, but they're so plainly obvious that they can not only be like clear to see for like middle America guy who isn't plugged into pop culture, but for like children that are shown this movie, you're just watching this like simpleton like let life happen at him, and you're just like, haha, the way that man who act like child reacts to this is funny.
Yeah, it's light, it's snappy, it moves. Yeah, there's not a single scene that drags in this movie. I think that some of the trouble is, there's a lot of stuff. This movie plays like a fable, kind of. So there's a lot of stuff that feels very fantastical, or not even fantastical, but just like, not grounded in the most plausible reality. And so there are areas, it's silly. So it's like there are areas where you're just like, oh, you kind of have to suspend your disbelief a lot. But I think that part of the reason why this movie was so huge is because of the ending. Like the last few minutes of this movie wash away a lot of the problems because it's so good. We'll get to it, obviously, but Tom Hanks, like he has a scene where it's just like, that's it. That's the Oscar.
Yeah,
I said it when we watched it.
Yeah, literally that I wrote it down like as you were saying it. Yeah, so much stuff lands so well by the end of the movie because Hanks just absolutely locks the fuck in. And so when the real dramatic beats need to hit, they do. Because up to that point, like it's really easy to sort of sneer at the movie, to sort of remove yourself like one layer away and laugh at a lot of what's going on. And I very much will do that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not too worried about it. But ultimately, I think you're right that this is it's such an encapsulation of like the art form in so many ways. And also, it's an encapsulation of like the idea of storytelling, like because it feels like such a fable. It feels like something like some bullshit that like Homer would write about, you know what I mean? About like Odysseus, like
it's an epic journey.
Wow. Yeah, exactly. It's like, wow, the idea that one guy could encounter so many, unbelievable
so many
presidents in history and have such an impact on everyone. Yeah, that's like as old as storytelling gets. Like the oldest stories were literally just like one time there was like a crazy guy, like an awesome guy. And that's like the Bible.
And he grew a beard.
Yeah.
Very long.
Facts.
Which by the way, speaking to that point, like that a big credit to this movie's success goes to Eric Roth. This is adapted from a book. We were a little behind the scenes for people. We were originally supposed to record last week, and I'm glad that we didn't, because since we didn't record last week, I did more research into the background of Gump and like just other things. And it is crazy how different the book is from the movie that like I didn't even know about. Like Gump in the film is kind of like just like total good. Like he's like simple, but he just always has like the best intentions of things. And like in the book, in the source material, he's not really that at all. Like he is not pure good in any kind of way. He's much more like observant of just like, yeah, I know I'm an idiot about things. There's also like a bunch of really, really smart choices that they made. Like, of course, he there is a little bit of like him floating through the history of America and some of that, but not quite as blatant and as obvious as in this film. For example, in the book, he goes to space at one point with an orangutan.
Epic.
And then at the end of the movie, he starts Bubba Gump Shrimp. It gets very successful. And he decides, I don't want this money anymore. So he forgoes his money. He gives it all away. And then him, the orangutan, and Lieutenant Dan go and start a band. They start like a traveling band together and become like hobos.
We were fucking robbed, man.
Which is insane way to end the story.
I can't believe they should have cut out Lieutenant Dan, not the monkey. Keep the monkey.
I was like reading through it and I was just like, what is like the people are like, Forrest, you have to run for senator. And he's like, no, I don't want this. I just want to be homeless and start a band with my orangutan and play like the fucking harmonica or something.
That's kind of gangster. But there is. I've read a lot. Like there are like insane differences. And so, a lot of credit does go to Eric Roth, who's written like a zillion, humongous screenplays.
I mean, his career after this is kind of the more notable thing. This was kind of the first big thing he did that really put him on the map. And now recently he was nominated for an Oscar for Dune, right? He co-wrote that with Denis.
Really? That was him? I know he did
first Dune.
Benjamin Button, and Benjamin Button basically has the exact same like narrative structure as Forrest Gump. And honestly, I didn't really mind it. It's a good formula. Life of Pi kind of did the same thing too. I'm a sucker for this narrative structure.
He should have been nominated last year for Killers of the Flower Moon because that's a perfect screenplay adaptation. But
it also, I think a lot of like what lasts about this movie sort of speaks to something that I think about a lot when it comes to like what stories are told is I think that obviously you can't tell every single story so cleanly just about having like one single protagonist and like an evolving world around him. But like more scripts should be that, you know what I mean? It really helps things sort of cement themselves in the viewer's head if you stick to that, to that sort of archetype. And I know it's not always possible. And I also know that like there are only so many stories that you can make that are just like about like one person going on an epic journey. But I don't know. There was something like I felt myself charmed by the idea of like, oh yeah, a movie can just be about like some guy,
doing things.
And even from the time it starts, because it's doing like borderline annoying things. It's hard to separate yourself. I don't know if it would have been seen as like a little eye rolly in the 90s to have the main device of the movie be like he's just sitting at a bus stop telling his story. I love the thing that really saves it for me is I love the idea that like the actual person he's talking to changes constantly.
that was really good.
They keep getting on the bus.
It really it sort of lends itself toward like the nature of the story about like the banality of like the randomness of life and everything. I was a little bit less forgiving of the feather.
Hey man, it's like Forrest. Funny. He's just floating through life. He's just floating around.
It's a little bit of like bordering on Hal Ashby's being there of like, how many times can my guy fail upwards? Like this can't be. I think the best version of that is the running at the end where everybody's like, this guy's a genius. He must be running for a reason here.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of being there in this movie, absolutely. But no, I just meant the feather that starts and ends the movie, just fluttering about like is.
I mean, how else would you start? Yeah, it's a motif, exactly.
It's also, again, this movie is so obvious. Like I wrote down a specific example I was going to call out earlier, but like the scene where we see Gump with Nixon, and Gump says, "I'm staying at a hotel," and Nixon says, "I know a perfect hotel for you." So we cut to a hotel, and then we cut to people seeing with flashlights in a different room of the hotel. And then in case we still don't get it as the audience, we have to pan over to a stationery that says Watergate Hotel, and then cut to Nixon saying, "I'm resigning." Like they are making it so obvious to
That's
the point
the
that like
moment.
it is all like it's all eye rolly. This entire movie is a giant eye roll, but like I think that is part of the staying power of this movie too, is that it is so like smacking you in the face with accessibility that it might be to its detriment
with the entire movie.
Yeah, I'm going to disagree with
most
Hunter
of the pop culture
bit.
moments, I will say.
I think some of what Hunter is trying to say here, I think for me, it's played off as like a joke.
Yeah. Oh no, a lot of it is so satirical, this movie. I'm not saying that it's a detriment to the movie, but I'm just saying like the pop culture moments are like they're blatant. You don't have to do a lot of digging to get what they're trying to say.
It's funny. It's fucking hilarious.
I think the Watergate thing is funny. There are worse ones. Like the smiley face is terrible.
It's bad. Yeah.
But I don't know. Like I for some reason I'm totally blanking on like all of them right now. There's like the Apple stock.
Yeah, he got richer than Davy Crockett. I'll say the funniest aspect of Hank's performance as Forrest Gump is when he's just completely straight-faced, like looking at someone. He's just dead and looking them in the eye, and he's just like, "My name's Forrest Gump."
Forrest Gump.
So it's a really, really, interesting performance. It might be the most irreplaceable of all the Tom roles that we've seen so far, just because like it shouldn't even be working with what we're seeing. Like it shouldn't even be working with Hank. So it's too hard to even imagine anyone else trying this shit because it's crazy. He's essentially, we established pretty early on when he's a kid getting checked out by the doctor that his IQ 75. So I did a little digging on that. That qualifies you as quote unquote borderline. they don't say borderline what?
Borderline Rain Man?
Borderline.
Rain Man was a genius. Rain Man was borderline on the opposite end of the.
No, it qualifies you as like borderline, probably like needing assistance in order to live. You know what I mean? It puts him like in roughly the bottom like 8% of people in America, which like rightly so, like that is not necessarily enough to render you like completely like useless. You know what I mean? Like he's still very capable of like having this life because there's tons of fucking stupid people out there. You know what I mean? He's playing a really stupid guy basically. And one of the first things I wrote down is immediately the accent is more than I remember.
Yeah, you chuckle at a lot of lines.
He's giving you so much voice. And I know I couldn't get an impression down either, Hunter, because I guess maybe that means we owe Tom a little bit of credit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe it's hard.
Yeah.
Well, there's a story apparently when they were filming, he had to like dial into it. He had to say things, the lines like a bunch of times, and he would be like, nope, not there. And he would just repeat it over and over and over until he was happy with it.
I also read somewhere on, I can't remember if it was in some trivia or something like that they originally recorded some stuff. It like was all canned. They like Bobby Zemeckis was like, Tommy, we don't have it yet. We're going to have to just try again. And then Tom saw the kid who plays young Forrest, and he just actually talks like that. And was just like, I'm going to do a grown-up impression of this child.
That's good.
Which is really good.
Yeah.
But I will say, going back, because I like went back and I read my review that I wrote for this movie whenever I was going through all the Best Picture movies. And I think I come off a bit too critical in that review, because I do think, giving Bobby Z some credit here, I think that this movie does do a really good job of juggling the sincerity with the satire. And I think that a lot of that does come down to Hanks, and a lot of it comes down to Zemeckis, like understanding each other, that he does such a good job of skipping ahead towards the end here, of seeing when Jenny looks at the old broken down house, and everything that she's been through, like she's been molested in this house, that it's so dark, and like he does this incredible job throughout the film of making the audience feel what's Gump or what the protagonist doesn't, or maybe I should say like he maybe feeling what Gump feels but doesn't understand. He's unable to articulate it, but we as the audience, because we see the other characters and the other world around it, we are able to internalize that and to articulate that better than even Gump can to himself.
He's an observer. He's not really. There are moments when he does take like active action in the movement of the plot of this movie, but a lot of times he's just that feather just floating through, right? And as a character, I think it's tough for us to latch onto Forrest, and you know, this movie is more a delivery mechanism for all these pop culture things, right? And the story of who Forrest Gump is as a man and like the choices he makes in his life is an interesting one. But I think that, you know, the other big reason why this movie is such a success is because it's for every American, right? So every idea it presents at you, it presents it in a way where like you can read it multiple ways. You know, the Vietnam speech is a perfect example. They literally cut his audio. You don't hear what he says. You don't hear what he actually, you know, is going to say to these organizers. And that's just a perfect example of why this movie is so kind of, I would say perplexing to some extent, but it's hard to crack. It's hard to crack the stance. You called it balancing, but the stance of the movie is it does you can kind of go either way. It's not conservative or liberal. It's just like Forrest and observation. It's very much like Alex Garland's Civil War, where it's just capturing it's just capturing the war zone that is 20th century America. And it's doing it in an objective way where it's not taking it aside necessarily.
I think that unlike Alex Garland's Civil War, this movie does have a point of view, though. And it does stick to that, even if it's the point of view of Simpleton. But no, I get what you're saying, because there is a little bit of like, this movie has a patriotism to it, but it also has a very, very staunchly anti-American vibe. And I feel like it's kind of appropriate for the time in which this came out. Like, this is this had to come out in 1994. If you think about this, like, this couldn't have come out in the 70s because it might have been a little bit too jaded. It couldn't have come out in Reagan's America because it might have been a little bit too pro-patriotic. Like, it came out at just enough removed from that time.
Yeah, that's a good call. This could only come out in the 90s. And it's just it's an interesting take on American culture. It's like a super Clinton era take. It's also
it's like a greatest hits too, of like just
I mean, it's very much that. Yeah, it's just like an ultra boomer movie, but and it does. I would say I think sometimes, as opposed to like maintaining it, you know, this like omniscient point of view, I think it's like actively avoiding trying to take a stance on things. Kind
of to a fault, right?
Yeah, like you know, when they cut Forrest Mike out during the Vietnam speech, like he very famously, like Tom Hanks has talked about what he says in that speech, and it's like really like it could very easily have been used in the movie and it would have been very powerful. It's like a very simple speech about like, I don't think it's good when, you know, that people don't come home from war or whatever.
My
and I think
friend's dad.
I think the movie was a little bit like, should we even? I at points I felt like that. The other big example when I felt like the movie was like overtly trying to avoid having any, you know, opinion on what's going on is the entire scene in the Black Panther lair.
That's one of the worst parts of the movie.
Tough. Exactly. They're in this Panther lair and like this guy is spitting a bunch of facts, like this Black Panther leader, and right when it would come time for someone to respond to him, Forrest freaks out because someone's like Jenny's boyfriend like hits her, and so he's like, well, I would, but let me go, you know what I mean? It's just like, so it's maintaining this insane neutrality where like this guy says all of this stuff, but it's not necessarily right or wrong.
Mm-hmm. It's just said, it can just be viewed as this like hyper militant group.
What are you, Collin? What are your thoughts on this whole idea of Forrest Gump being like this very observant figure in the movie? And I guess the other thing too is how that reflects on like our interpretation of how Forrest Gump as a movie sits in culture, right? It's like it's both the character in the movie and like our understanding of the point of view of the movie, right?
I feel like I have the weight of the world on my entire shoulders right now, trying to like analyze the politics of Forrest Gump, and
it's going to drive us crazy. I feel like I'm already ready to like drill a hole into my head.
So you guys are saying like, oh, this movie could have only been made in 1994. And every time I watch like a movie that I really love, I always think like the reason it works is because of the time it was made. And I agree. Like every amazing movie, it works because of the time it was made. Same with like certain genres of music. And I mean, I don't know. I was just born, but maybe 1994, it was just a decent time to be patriotic about
more America. Humble.
Yeah.
Simpler.
And and this movie was giving people an outlook to be like, oh yeah, we lived through all of that, like a real collective experience. And because it's neutral, everyone can enjoy it, and not in like a bland, boring way where it's like made for everyone, but it's everyone can understand Forrest because he's so simple.
So you're saying that 1994 as a person is Forrest Gump, that he is the year 1994 as a vibe, personified.
Technically, the movie is capped at like 1982, 1983. Yeah, I think it was just like a vibe that lots of people generally could kind of get behind and be like, yeah, I remember when insert
president got shot.
We were in HW's America. Things were better then. Pre-Clinton.
Enough time had passed that you could look back on all these events with such kind of just removed perspective, right? They don't feel these are just moments. These are just little moments sprinkled into the life of this man. You know, you're not really sitting on the gravity of presidential assassination or something like that, or war. I mean, he does go to war, but this, I mean, we've covered Born on the 4th of July on this podcast. Like the depiction of Vietnam in this movie is just incredibly sanitized compared to what you see in Born on the 4th.
So that said, that's what I'm like. This movie is not trying to have to like take any stance on anything at all. You know what I mean? That's not the point of the movie. So what the movie is trying to do, it does insanely well, because like we both like when the fighting started in Vietnam, I kind of like did like the guy sitting up meme. I was like, oh, Zemeckis is starting to direct here. Like he directed the shit out of this movie.
Like the 15 helicopters flying up around base camp and everything.
That's the thing about this movie is that it's so well made. Like every part of it is well made. Even if you feel like certain jokes don't land or things are slightly dated or like maybe it's not as deep as you want it to be, whatever. Like this movie's a huge successful movie for a reason, because it's well made. I mean, it's like you can toss your brain around in circles all day thinking about what the all the stuff around the movie means all these years later, right? And if someone gives it a half star on Letterboxd, like what they're talking about or whatever.
And please be on the lookout for my new piece in Slate called "How Forrest Gump Failed the Left."
Yeah, exactly. Like people who complain, I feel like there's always a cycle of like, oh, Forrest Gump is actually trash. You know, there's always that conversation will always come back around. And you can have that conversation. You can point out all the ways in which this movie is American propaganda or military propaganda or, all these incredibly kind of macho patriotic things. And they are, but the movie's also a satire and a critique of it. So it goes both ways.
It's so extreme that it's hard to read anything on face value of this movie. Like that's kind of the thing where like I can't really take any of those criticisms too seriously, because this is like it's doing so much that it's like it's satirizing itself at a certain point where like you cannot take it seriously. Like it's so funny that this is the same guy, the same director who made Back to the Future. And at the time there was uproar of a white person going back and writing Johnny B. Good and what that means for history. And Robert Zemeckis was like, don't worry, guys, I can do it for everyone. And just like made this Forrest Gump character be like the most important figure of the 1900s in America.
Well, and he's like, and it's a reverse of the giving something good to the historical figure. Like it makes Elvis look horrible. He stole his dance from a little disabled boy. It's so awesome.
But at least he didn't steal from black people.
Facts. Here's so general, like we've established, like this movie's aim is not to have an incisive commentary. All of that aside, I think that this movie is so pussy for not making Forrest Gump the biggest murderer in Vietnam War history. because he's
like a genius in a boot camp. He's like ready.
He's locked in.
He is so good at everything that he does in this movie. He's so good at every fucking thing physical. If his commander told him to kill a village, he'd have them dead in like a minute. Like he even blacks out in anger like multiple times in the movie. Like, like if his superior was like, now imagine that village over there. They have your Jenny.
He'd be like, Jenny!
Bro, they had Jenny there in Vietnam.
He'd be like
what'd you say?
If they just had Ginny there in Vietnam, like as like a
to control him,
like Ginny is like 4 miles that way. We need to secure the area.
Literally,
Jenny's in a 6 mile perimeter of the area.
Yeah, the entire country, the country of Vietnam just slapped Jenny. He would kill like 70 million people.
We would have won. The war would have gone a little bit differently. Okay, like if Jenny was there.
So around this area also is when. So before he leaves for Vietnam, we find when we finally get to the adult, the Hanks. We also meet Robin Wright, who this was this her star maker?
I believe. I mean, I think she was in some stuff before, but I think this was the first big one.
This is hands down her like most iconic
coming out party.
Performance. I can't think of anything else before Forrest Gump that she's
really great. I love the way that she makes him nut in his pants while her roommate is laying right there.
Deeply problematic scene, and also like, brother, we've all been in dorm rooms before. That just be how it is sometimes. Yeah. Sometimes you just got to make your homies nut.
I heard Hunter nut so many times while I was just facing the other way, like in the fetal position.
And it was into your clothes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just like, no, I think Drew's got like a sock around here or something.
So she's the first, like iconic character to come out of this, aside from Forrest.
Robin Wright was also in Toys. Can't forget that.
Facts. Wow.
Oh, that's the real star maker, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Lest we forget. And we'll get to her plenty later because she comes in and out of the movie like the whole time. But once we get to the Vietnam era, that's when we get to meet Bubba, which is a very interesting character. There's a lot less of him in the movie than you would think. He's only in a couple of scenes, but
he leaves an impact.
He's in like 10 minutes
billions of dollars.
10 minutes of this movie, and that's how much Mykelti Williams just fucking rules, man. R.I.P. Absolute king. He comes in and just perfectly matches Hanks's energy in such a small sample size. It's one of the biggest heat checks I've ever seen.
It's the first like neurodivergent friend that he's ever had.
And it mirrors,
you know what I mean?
The first time Gump goes on the bus, like to a T. And the movie is like chocked full of like so many callbacks, and I'm just a sucker for it every time when it happens in the movie. One thing I wanted to share about my thoughts on Forrest Gump is that, like Ernest, who creates many letterbox lists of varying topics, I want to create a list called movies that I'm a sucker for. Forrest Gump is a movie that I'm a sucker for.
That's
Whenever
funny.
I watch it, Robert Zemeckis, he like shows up and he starts like rubbing my feet and like putting like a lollipop in my mouth and like and it's like
he butters you up. Yeah.
Yeah, he butters me up while I'm watching Forrest Gump, and I just fall for every like stupid thing that happens in this movie.
It's such a, you're right, it's such a satisfying movie watching experience. Like as many times as I kind of scoffed or eye rolled or whatever, or had a snarky comment to make, or actively just ridiculed the movie, it never made me feel like it was boring me, or it wasn't like giving me what I want from a movie, which is to essentially entertain me. You know,
yeah, it's just
front
so
to back.
Entertaining.
It's
it really
deeply
is
entertaining. It never overstays its welcome at any given point in the movie. The Vietnam stuff, it is funny, like how small of a chunk that is in the movie because of like how iconic so many of the different sequences are. One, we get Gary Sinise, who is hands down my favorite part of the entire movie.
I think he's the best. I think it's the best.
I think it's the best performance in the movie. Like, just flat out, I think it's better than Hanks. What Gary Sinise
he's so good. He's
it.
so funny and sad, and he's absolutely phenomenal. I love him so much. I love him in everything, really.
It's the introduction that you get to Gary Sinise. It's Gary Sinise and Mykelti Williams, where Lieutenant Dan goes up to Bubba and he's like, "What's wrong with your lips?" And he's like, "I was born with big gums." It's so funny. It's so stupid and so funny.
I have a vivid memory of that same scene when Lieutenant Dan is like, "Are you guys like brothers or something?" And they both like look at each other, and Forrest goes, "No, sir, we are not relations." And I remember my mom was, like, losing her shit at that scene, thinking it was like hilarious, and that stuck with me. And now whenever I see that scene, it gets me.
It's
we are
so
not
funny.
relations is really funny.
Yeah.
But it's the pause before they like look at each other up and down and they're like, "Are we? No, we are not relations." It's so good. I loved all of that. And then of course, how that actually leads into the whole saving of the platoon and everything. And then Bubba's death scene, where he's just like, "I want to go home." It's just like, that's what I'm talking about the sincerity of this movie. For all of like the pop culture references and the bluntness and obvious and the satirizations that can hit you in the face at points, it does have the sincerity that runs through it. And whether it's saccharine or what, like it is still just like, it works, man. A lot of this movie, a lot of those sweet emotional moments just work, and they just hit you. They hit me. I cried multiple times while watching this movie, despite all of it.
This movie gets me choked up every single fucking time. There's like 5 scenes throughout the movie. I won't shed a tear. I'm not going to shed a tear, but my throat,
you'll quiver.
Yeah,
it locks.
I shed one tear at whenever Forrest meets his son.
Oh yeah, you got
that's the Oscar moment, and I'm like, no, you got me there. Is he like me?
That's
just like,
that's literally when that's the lock-in moment. Like he clinches it.
I didn't think we were going to get to that scene so quick, because that's my biggest take on the movie. What does Jenny say? Like, that's your Forrest is your daddy or whatever. But I think that moment when Forrest finds out he's a kid is the best acting I've ever seen in my entire life.
Whoa.
Yeah,
that's
just
cool.
Yeah,
it's very good. It's
it's so yeah. Like,
I think
it's a world of emotion that comes to his face. Like it's the to visually portray being overwhelmed is really hard, I think. And he does it like so like yeah, us when we were watching that moment was like, oh my God, you know, it's just such a fucking actor moment.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's such a Tom moment. Like the thing is, well, you know, we're going to get to the categories, but just in the context of this series, to see Tom Hanks in chronological order, like develop as an artist, as a performer, that moment, like, I don't know if it's the best acting I've ever seen. It's definitely up there. Like, it would make the list, but at least in the context of this series, it is such a affirmative and like consequential moment for the arc of Tom Hanks, where it's just like, man, he has reached a level of skill with his work that is unmatched, absolutely unmatched, and also kind of playing off of what people know him to be able to do. That's part of the magic of Hanks, is he knows that you know what he can do, right? And he either withholds it or leans into it, and he's actively trying to twist it in different ways, because every single time you're watching him, you're thinking it's Tom Hanks. I mean, this role, it reaches another level of you know, iconicness. You know, you if you see the man on the bench or the man running in the road, you're not thinking Tom Hanks, you're thinking Forrest Gump. But yeah, it is an incredible performance. It is an incredible moment. Like, it is definitely the iconic. Well, maybe not. Maybe the is life like a box of chocolates. We'll get to that. There's a whole category.
Yeah, but, I will say, I don't know if this is my favorite Hanks performance of this series so far. That's in the argument for the best like moment that Hanks has had in a movie so far. But I don't know if this is my favorite Hanks performance, or if this is, I don't want to say favorite, if I think this is the best Hanks performance that we will get in the
so
series.
so far, or in the entire series.
Well, I think in the entire series, I think Castaway is his best performance.
Yes,
because Castaway, you were acting opposite of volleyball, which is just incalculably more difficult than what a normal actor is asked to do on an everyday basis. But I do think like that moment specifically that you're talking about, Collin, is like, that's A1. That is cinema. Like triple A actor shit right there. Like, that is, you have a fucking spot on the Hall of Fame, on the Walk
Everyone
of Fame,
else
because of a scene like that.
For best actor, like, good luck after that.
So
exactly.
that's what I wanted to bring this up. I meant to bring this up at the beginning, but we can bring it up now while we're talking about Tommy. So Hanks wins back-to-back Oscars. He beats out, I don't know if you guys have the list pulled up, John Travolta in Pulp Fiction. Oof. And John Travolta's like comeback. Like, this is John Travolta re-arriving back in Hollywood. It's such like a narrative that would normally net him an Oscar. He beats out John Travolta. Paul Newman in like a so-so movie, but it's still Paul Newman. And probably the most egregious one that I actually really kind of stumble on who deserved it more is he beat out Morgan Freeman in Shawshank Redemption, which is the most iconic Morgan Freeman performance. Like, that's A1 Morgan Freeman.
You know, I've never seen Shawshank.
What? Shawshank is, oh my God, Ernie.
I need to.
Ernie, once we wrap up this podcast, fire up Shawshank Redemption. It's like just the easiest 5 stars you'll throw out in a while. It's a banger. It's a
huge
movie.
Blind spot for me.
And then queuing off based on that, Forrest Gump beats out for Best Picture. This is an all-time year in the Best Picture list. Pulp Fiction, Quiz Show, 4 Weddings and a Funeral, and Shawshank Redemption.
Nice.
Like that's an all-timer 5 out of 5 list. Like there's no misses in that list whatsoever.
I'm fine with Forrest Gump winning Best Picture over Pulp Fiction and Shawshank Redemption simply because I love all 3 of those movies. They're all great.
Great picks.
Yeah, but people get like people have like a hate boner for Forrest Gump these days. And
definitely.
It was common like 10, 15 years ago where on YouTube, let's just say the Chris Stuckmans of the world.
Mm-hmm.
It was very common for people to just say, "Oh yeah, Forrest Gump. That's one of my favorite movies." And now, if you say that out loud, you have to be like ashamed of it.
There's
the woke mob has come.
There's the incredible joke in The Big Sick with our boy Ray Romano, who's just like, people, you go on the internet, people say they hate Forrest Gump. Best freaking movie ever.
You weren't going to try to do a Ray Romano?
No, I can't do it. I can't do a Ray Romano. You can't ask me to just bust these out on the spot.
They hate Forrest.
I do want to
movie ever.
getting back to Forrest Gump. I do want to back up a step before we get to Nom, because there are like some moments just jotting down again to just kind of like the insanity of the Gump film that like you kind of jump right into it. Of course, we start with Forrest being named after the founder of the KKK. Kind of insane that they would put that in the movie. That leads you to believe that Sally Field is an active
founder. I didn't even catch that it was the founder.
KKK. The creator of the KKK. That is who Forrest Gump is named after, which means Sally Fields is racist as hell.
And it's Tom Hanks in a KKK.
The first time you see Tom Hanks flashback in the movie, it's him putting on a fucking Klan hood.
Gump, where was Gump on January 6th? Gump's definitely at the Capitol.
Trump got elected because of Forrest.
Yeah.
Like Forrest 100% voted for Trump. He's like, I don't know. I watched that man on The Apprentice and he always seemed pretty nice.
Nah, man, Trump is just at his house. He never leaves Greenbow, Alabama if he doesn't have to.
Do you think Forrest has never voted? He's never voted in an election before.
I don't think he has. They don't bring it up in the movie. I don't think he cares. He just kind of accepts like the status quo and like observes it.
I have an important question for you guys, and that is, we have a category for running that is only applied to Tom Cruise in this series so far. So, what do you guys think of Hanks running versus Tom Cruise's running? How does it compare?
The character of Gump would win this category over Tom Cruise any day. But Hanks himself is not like really doing that much. I mean, the famous like long hair and the desert scene is obviously iconic, but actually running, there's a lot of shots where it's not Tom Hanks.
What do you think of his form is my question, because I watched that and I was like, that hurts my back to look at the way that he is running. That is not the way that a human being should run and move their body. If you saw that and you were Bear Bryant in 1950s Alabama, are you recruiting that man to be like your Devin Hester?
You know, with the new kickoff return rules in the NFL, he would get a hefty contract. If that's all he could do.
Dude, I kept
like
saying,
15 mil a year.
If it wasn't for the fucking draft, Gump would have gone pro.
Yeah.
I was saying maybe he played for the Broncos or something. You know, where would you put him?
And Jenny would have hitched up with him way faster because all she was after was money anyway.
Can we talk about Jenny in this movie? So Jenny's in the R-rated version of this movie, which I would love to see. Maybe not directed by Robert Zemeckis. Maybe it's directed by like Martin Scorsese or something like that.
Jenny, yeah. And I'll tell you one thing for sure. In the R-rated version of this movie, that's not actually Forrest's son. She just fucking tells him it is.
Yeah, because he's like one of the most famous people on earth. Yeah.
His Apple stock. He's set. I didn't need to worry about money. I said, great, that's one less thing.
Now, I do believe that Forrest is virile enough to impregnate her immediately upon nutting, but I don't know. It was really sus.
It's basically like Beau is Afraid. Like, you gotta think, like, he's only nutted twice in his life, and both of them have been because of Jenny. To touching a boob and then actually having sex. So like, that shit is potent.
I'm always saying that there's a lot of similarities between Forrest Gump and Beau is Afraid.
Can I say my biggest thing against Jenny in this entire movie? And there's a lot of things, because I actually think that her character is like probably the most like offensive thing about this movie.
Yeah,
the way that
like,
Jenny is
look
portrayed.
at all the progressive. Look what happens to all the progressives.
It's
the
it's
countercultural
really tough,
people. They fucking die.
They do heroin and they fucking die.
They listen to Leonard Skinner.
The worst Jenny scene in this entire movie is before Gump goes to Nam. And it's after he goes to base camp and everything, and he goes to visit her wherever she's at in like Nashville or something like that. And she's in a strip club and she's completely naked playing like slow folk music on an acoustic guitar, and people are booing her, and Gump like starts a fight. Guess what? I'd be pissed too. Okay, I'll say it. If I like went to a nice gentleman's club and then I'm just like listening to a sad folk song on acoustic guitar, I'd be like, "What the fuck
Let's pick up the pace. Let's get the party started." Yeah,
honestly, that's so true.
That's what you did. You saw a nude woman play acoustic guitar,
and you
she was covering everything. They
want
see
her.
The nudity.
They don't want to hear none of that. Fucking, she's trying to do like Taylor Swift's new album, like singer-songwriter. They're like, can we? I'm begging you for some titties.
Can I please see a nipple, please?
He just beats the shit out of those guys. He just goes like Terminator mode on them.
I love Hanks's physicality when he's just wailing on dudes. Yeah. It's so fucking funny. It's so fun to watch.
He's got that dumb guy strength.
It's like a rock'em sock'em.
He's like a orangutan. Like, it's not even human. It's like an ape. The way he just is like punching down.
Giant
Yeah, he's like a fucking robot. I love it. Yeah, I love a lot about Hanks's the choices he makes in this movie, because the world may never know how to feel about that voice, but it doesn't matter. He's so damn compelling to watch.
I will say, at the very beginning of the movie, the voice, it's a little weird at first when it first hits your ears.
Mama always said.
But the magic of this movie and Hanks is that he just sells you on it, and it stops kind of being grating right away. It's a very strange phenomenon that this movie has on me. But then again, I'm just a sucker for Gump.
Well, I think that you are right. It's because there's that constant voiceover that's happening that it does lull you to a certain point. Like, you never are jarred by the voice after the beginning. Like, at that point, once you buy in, exactly, you just like buy in.
You're
like,
set.
This just is what it is, and
we're also like,
accept this.
It's also established, like, when he's still a kid, that like this isn't a guy with like a specific like genetic condition. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like, oh man, did Tom Hanks like study like people that have problems to get this? It's like, no, he just is like a super stupid like Southern guy.
Yeah.
So like you can't be like, I don't know. It takes sort of the edge off there.
Yeah, but like also, I mean, I'm thinking of like the New Year's Eve party. Whenever like they have like I'm assuming they're like hookers. I don't know what exactly they were that come back to the hotel
ladies of the evening.
Him and Gary Sinise.
Hookers, Hunter, not hookers.
Excuse me. I apologize. I don't know. Are they actually sex workers? Like, that's why I'm just like, are they sex workers, or were they just people who are just like out and about and just like really like Gary Sinise's
They want to fuck Forrest Gump and Gary Sinise for fun.
Well, that's why I'm just like, does nobody else in this world realize, like, look at Forrest Gump and be like, is this guy like all the way there? Like, nobody is questioning it at all.
No, because he's
so there's like, hey, she tasted like cigarettes. And they're like, no, this is probably a normal human being. Doesn't have
no,
anything.
They know he's fucking. They know he's like super off, but he's also really, really good at a lot of stuff. Like this. So after Vietnam, this movie spends more time in the world of ping pong than it does Vietnam.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you know, like there's just so much of him just being a crazy good ping pong player and showing you like where that takes him in the world. That's responsible for like a lot of his his fame and like fortune and meeting so many like historical figures. You end up with him. I think the most egregious pop culture thing is the jokes, the way that the jokes are written when he's on Dick Cavett with John Lennon and they're just doing like imagine jokes.
Yeah, just like you saying, imagine there's no heaven or hell.
That one was so rough.
They don't go to church, and John Lennon's like, "What?
No religion too?"
It's all, but you reach a certain point because like some of them I really did enjoy. Like I like the Watergate one because it really feels like it's like a Family Guy cutaway. You know, where it's just like, oh. You know, they do a lot of those on Family Guy where it's like, oh yeah, this is even worse than that time I stayed at that hotel, you know, and it cuts to like, it would cut to like Peter, you know, calling the front desk about it.
I think my favorite joke is just Bubba for seemingly hours and hours, maybe even days, just talking about all the different ways you can cook shrimp.
Yeah, and then
that's
just
so
like,
good.
And that's it.
Cuts to next scene, and he's still talking about all the more ways he can cook shrimp. I think that my favorite joke, and it's one of the more subtle ones, I guess subtle in quotes, because it's still like it's more of a moment that like if you know, you know. And I thought that, Collin, you would shout this one out. It's the moment that they go to New York and they play the "Everybody's Talking About Me" from Midnight Cowboy. And you also get the banging on the hood. I'm walking here. Like they're literally just doing Midnight Cowboy for like 15 seconds of the movie. And it's just a thing like, if you know, then you know. They're using the song choice.
That's a good one.
Again, it's all on the nose, but man, the soundtrack just rips. Like they kind of fucking nailed it with the soundtrack.
It's a little much.
It's so on the nose and obvious that again, like it can be, you can roll your eyes at a certain point, but like it is playing into the story. It matches the tone and kind of the bluntness of the story itself. I did want to ask you guys, because I wrote down what the most iconic Vietnam song, because we have two of the, I would say the big three.
Yeah, it's CCR.
In this movie. You get Fortunate Son and All Along the Watchtower, both in this movie. Between Fortunate Son, All Along the Watchtower, and Give Me Shelter, what is your pick for the iconic Vietnam War song?
CCR, Creedence Clearwater.
Yeah, iconic is CCR. I think the best one is All Along the Watchtower. But
no, Give Me Shelter. Marty would be ashamed.
I got
Marty's like going back and
the shot of the silhouette of the helicopter traversing, and then it pans to just Gump and Bubba, just two bros. Like they don't know what they're getting themselves into, but damn it, all they have is each other.
Give Me Shelter. That song. Speaking of Robert Zemeckis, I just watched Flight for the first time recently. His movie with Denzel Washington, and he uses "Give Me Shelter" a lot in that movie. And he also, there's a couple other neo drops.
That's Marty's song. He can't also use that song multiple times in the same movie. You can't do that, Bobby.
It's very prominent. And there's another song that he uses that's like incredibly on the nose. That good movie, great Denzel performance, but I was curious about like Robert Zemeckis as a director, which maybe we can talk about a little bit, but his arc has been really crazy. And
it's just his whole career was just building up to Man on Wire, and then so after that, where do you go?
Yeah, once he walks on that wire,
you apex with Man on Wire. Then
Gump is what, almost a decade after Back to the Future.
9 years.
Yeah, like a little less than a decade. So obviously you get this kind of incredible burst out onto the scene. He made a couple movies before then, but it's like almost like an instant classic status out the gate.
Yeah. Well, do you have the run pulled up, because it's kind of insane.
Used cars. Oh wait, no. So I want to hold your hand. Used cars. So he does
Back to the Future, amazing stories, an episode of that. But Back to the Future, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Back to the Future 2, Back to the Future 3, Death Becomes Her, Forrest Gump, Contact, What Lies Beneath. We're starting to trickle off again. Castaway, and then it's we're starting to have diminished returns critically, but still successful commercially. Polar Express.
Oof.
And then 2007 is when we kind of take the nosedive. That's when we get Beowulf, A Christmas Carol.
And then Flight, though. That's the thing. It's like out of nowhere. Flight is sandwiched in between The Walk and A Christmas Carol. And it's like this R-rated movie about a drunk pilot that's like on cocaine being cool.
It's not called Man on Wire?
No, you're thinking of a different... You're thinking of the documentary.
Yes.
Man on Wire.
JGL.
He did not direct the documentary. This is the actual, like, the adaptation, the biopic of that guy with The Walk.
The Walk is a horrible movie name.
With Joseph Gordon-Levitt. His career is basically over. Like, is he ever going to work again?
The fact doing The Walk, Allied, Welcome to Marwen, The Witches, and Pinocchio, 5 movies in a row, that's done. Like, that's... You're in director prison. Like, it's not even director jail. It's I got terrible.
Guns in my head and they won't go.
He's got a new movie and they won't. Hanks and Robin Wright coming out this year.
The big reunion.
Yeah,
it's happening. Apparently, it is some kind of weird animated thing.
I'm not.
Is what I heard.
It's about like a room that takes place over like 1,000 years. So
it captures the human experience in its purest form.
So like Forrest Gump. It's just like Forrest Gump.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know why he lost the juice, because I do love him as a filmmaker. He's made many, many classics. So
well, he was always
right.
He was always very fixated on like the capabilities of like, you know, digital technology and blah blah blah. You know what I mean?
There's a lot of really well done CGI in this movie, like CGI that does hold up pretty well, given that it's in the mid-90s.
Lieutenant Dan's legs are consistently very, very convincing. There's a shot where he's laying on the ground and he's like working to put himself on his wheelchair, and he swings the legs in front of a coffee table. And it's just like little things like that to show that, you know, to sell the idea of his legs actually being gone. Perfect.
It's just won the Oscar for visual effects.
It deserves it. It's also, I think it's sort of sometimes it can be an omen for bad things to come when a director is super fixated on like visual technique stuff like that. Like with, you know, Peter Jackson, for example. Even like Steven Soderbergh, he's so obsessed with what's possible that he has stopped being interested in making just good movies.
That's Steven Soderbergh, I was going to say, is like the clear example of this, where it's like, could Steven Soderbergh just make like a movie that's like focuses on having like a good script? Because our boy could do it. Yeah,
just make a normal movie.
He's like, this time I want to shoot on the Google Pixel Pro, but in portrait mode. And you're like, Steven, stop.
And then, and like fucking Zemeckis is like, we have, thanks to CG, we have the ability to make Tom Hanks so many characters in the Polar Express.
I think,
including
honestly,
Geppetto.
Robert, if we were to make like a betting pool on who's going to make the first like blockbuster Chat GPT written like AI fully generated film, I would bet on Zemeckis being the one. Zemeckis is like, it's genre pushing everything. There wasn't a single human who worked on this aside from me. I did it all.
I mean, that's kind of how I felt about Pinocchio. Like that is such a soulless. That is such a soulless fucking movie. Everyone was asleep.
I do want to say, I think that Zemeckis was behind it. Did you guys hear anything about the canned Forrest Gump sequel?
Yeah, Gumpy.
Yeah. So Gump and Son. It was going to be about Forrest and his son, little baby Haley
Joel Osment.
Yeah, just little him and baby Haley Joel. There's like no details on what this script was, but apparently they turned in the script to Paramount on September 9th, 2001. And then 9/11 happened. And they were like, yeah, we can't make this now.
We're good on
like,
that.
we cannot make this. So that makes me so fascinated to know what was this movie. Like, I just want to know what
he did 9/11 in the book.
Yeah, what is the outline of this? They're just like, me and my son went and visited the World Trade Center, and it was a very odd day that day.
We taught some nice pilots how to fly.
Like, I really want to see Gump and Son. If we can make that now in 2024, I think that'd be great.
That would just be about Chet Hanks.
Right. Yes. You wouldn't keep Haley Joel? You recast?
If it's Chet Hanks, then we like reshoot the last scene, the scene with Robin where she's like, is he smart? Is he like me? And they're gonna be like, yeah, he's so much like you. Your son is exactly like you.
He's at the bottom of his class.
You had a 75. He has a 50 IQ.
So he's like, me mom always said life is like big box of chocolates.
A ping pong, bing.
Oh man, what we missed out on, what we could have had.
My fudge did big ping pong bing.
I couldn't finish Pinocchio. I just couldn't do it to myself.
You know what's funny? So wife of the pod Gaia was telling me the other day, I guess apparently she regularly puts on our Pinocchio episode, which was very flattering because she said that's her favorite episode of us that we've ever done because you can see us like devolving in real time.
Was that a live app?
No,
I don't know.
No,
she said that we are very under the influence for part of it.
I had the movie pulled up. I was like scrubbing through the Pauly Shore one.
Back to directors who lost their juice because of like digital technology. There's also George Lucas, and it's gonna be the first time I admit this on pod, but my beloved Ang Lee. What happened?
Yeah, dude, he's Billy Lynn's long halftime walk.
He apologized for his last few movies, like publicly. He was like,
for Gemini Man.
Yeah, he just needs to make his Forrest Gump. Every director needs their Forrest Gump.
I mean, didn't he kind of get that with Life of Pi?
Yeah, that was like he won the Oscar.
That was what he wanted for Life of Pi to be, a perfectly like mids movie. I want Ang Lee to personally write me a check for a refund for my D-Box ticket that I bought to go see Gemini Man. That's what I'm waiting on.
Yeah, I think you did that to yourself, Hunter.
I know.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, you ignored so many warning signs.
Yeah. Collin, I watched Brokeback Mountain for the first time this year, and I think it might be one of the best movies I've seen in a very long time. So, Ang Lee, boy can cook.
I'm glad you feel the same way. That movie blew me the fuck away.
Yeah, I was in the mood for like an emotional, devastating watch. And I was like, I need this to hit me, and it did. And I think Heath Ledger is like unbelievable in that movie.
It's a 10 out of 10 masterpiece, and I mean, if you want to div it into a Brokeback pod, I'm all in.
Have you guys seen it?
No,
it's been a long time since I saw it in like.
You are not allies.
Or high school.
You guys are basically homophobes.
I actually I didn't appreciate the lack of people of color in it.
You're part of the problem.
I'm more of a Moonlight guy.
Oh yeah, you were waiting to give the Oscar for that one.
What color does Joker turn in the moonlight? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
Green.
Back to Forrest Gump.
You don't want to find the segue from Brokeback Mountain.
I thought about it.
Wonder what Forrest did while he was herding sheep in the mountains.
You know what? Unlike Heath Ledger, I'm glad that Jenny didn't kill herself while listening to Freebird off of her balcony.
Guys,
I don't know.
I'm going to bring this back to Gump because there's a very important aspect of Gump that hasn't been brought up, and that's Sally Fields, Forrest's mama.
Very well cast.
She fucks the principal.
Him.
She hates black people.
I did not understand that she was fucking the principal when I was a kid. I was like,
no.
What? Forrest making weird grunt noises. What the fuck is
that's
he?
That's like the funniest gag in the whole movie.
It's so
like,
good.
Incredible.
Yeah, it's so fucking funny. Young Forrest absolutely nails it. He cooks that fucking principal.
Death stare.
But yeah, she's smashing. She loves her boy.
One of my favorite lines is when Forrest says, like, he says how his mom always had a way of explaining things to him. There's just something really like endearing, heartwarming, and like deeply hilarious about that line.
And it's true. Like she knew that he was a simple boy, and so she kept things very simple with him. And as a result, he got a lifetime's worth of fucking aphorisms thrown his way.
Guys, go call your mom after.
Call your mother.
You never know what you're gonna get.
It is funny that at least I noticed it, that like we're now reaching a point watching a lot of these movies where like Sally Fields in old makeup in this looks worse than what Sally Fields looks like now in 2024. Like Sally Fields in 2024 looks incredible.
Yeah.
And it's just like you see her in old makeup for her age. And it's like, oh, this is like what they thought that she would look like. And
the other day, Mrs. Doubtfire was on TV. And I just watched like the restaurant scene, and Sally Field is so good in that when she's like the whole time.
The mid-90s were just great.
Sally Field's an icon.
Yeah, she was incredible. A couple other spare thoughts about the movie. A running gag in the movie is Forrest narrating a line and then someone immediately just saying that entire line like in diegetically, like in the story.
It's a great little bit to have in there. Like another shout out to Eric Roth on that screenplay. Very funny. The humor of this movie does age pretty good.
It does, and even when it's dark, because like one of my favorite sort of running, it's not even really a bit, but just I absolutely love Gary Sinise's energy when he's like, God damn it, Forrest, I should be dead. Like, why didn't you?
Yeah, because his whole family, he comes from ancestors that all died at every war.
Yeah, he's so mad at Forrest. He's like, why am I not fucking dead right now?
There's also some just incredible visual gigs, both with Gary Sinise, but with everybody. Like, I really wish that the last time you ever saw Gary Sinise in this movie is whenever he's like yelling at the hurricane and like trying to be like, God, you can't kill me, like fighting God. And then the storm ends and he just backpedals and he just backstrokes into the ocean. And I really wish that we just never saw Lieutenant Dan again.
That would have been great.
Like, he just backstroked away and we never saw him again. That was just the end of Lieutenant Dan.
And that was the last time I saw that man.
Are you kidding me? Because then we get to see him with his new legs, and Forrest is just gobsmacked by it.
It's so funny. What does he say?
That's a great Tom moment. He's like, Lieutenant Dan.
And then he like
new legs.
Yeah, and then he turns to like Jenny, and he's like, new legs. It's really funny.
She's like, honey, oh my God, I see. Wow.
That's the wedding, right? When he comes to their wedding. Oh, that's so sweet.
So pre that, again, we're messing around with just like a wildly fluctuating level of intelligence here with Forrest, because it's one thing to be like stupid but freakishly good at like athletic feats, but he is really stupid and really good at running a shrimping business. Like, I know that a lot of it is the happenstance of being the only shrimping business in town, but he has like a fucking like a warehouse full of boats and shit. He becomes very, very wealthy from it. I love the entire sequence of it. I love him and Lieutenant Dan on the boat together. I think that's all like really solid movie.
Yeah, it's well done. I wonder if they shot it out there in the water.
In the bayou.
It kind of looks like they do at times. I'm sure some of it was CG, but it's genuinely.
I think that they did a lot of shooting on location in this movie. from what I was able to see with the budget, like this movie actually has a pretty good sized budget. It's in like the 50 mil range, I want to say. Something like
55,
that. 55 mil,
He crashes his fucking boat into the pier because he's so excited that Lieutenant Dan's there.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, this movie made $678 million worldwide off of a $55 million budget. That's so crazy. Okay. Any other broader thoughts before we get to the categories on anything that happens?
I have one, and it was something that I kind of noticed and thought about on my last rewatch that kind of blew me away. To sum it up, basically, Forrest, he's recounting his life story, and towards the end of the movie, it's his next like chapter, and I thought that was always extremely well done. And but when him and Jenny are getting married, there's only like 12 people there, and I thought that was so like impactful. Like there's just a handful of people in Forrest's life that he would invite to his wedding.
Yeah,
no more, no less.
Even if he is so famous, like so ubiquitous and well known as a figure,
Bubba's family is there.
Yeah,
Bubba's mom and like Lieutenant Dan, and like that's pretty much it. And that was a detail that I had never noticed before.
Yeah, it's a nice one. It kind of made me think of Big Fish, which is another movie that harkens back to Forrest Gump. I think there's a lot of movies that harken back to Forrest Gump. It's a very influential movie. But that one in particular, like just the idea of like all the people that touched Gump throughout his life are now coming to see him in this major moment. Major Big Fish vibes. Okay.
I did want to say, because I guess this kind of leads into the categories. One, I just doing in research of this movie. Did you know that there's an Indian movie of this? An Indian version
pretty
of this movie
recent, right?
Yeah, which I'm like fascinated to see, because while I was watching this movie, I had the thought to myself of like, how does Forrest Gump play if you aren't American? Like, if you're just like a guy in France, like, how does Forrest Gump play? Because so much of it is like intertwined with specifically America's pop culture events and American history for like this 30-40 year span. So like I'm interested to see what a version of that looks like if it's not our culture.
Yeah, if it's
very interesting.
Every country gets their own adaptation of Forrest Gump.
Every country gets Forrest Gump. Yeah.
Well, we need our millennial Gump.
Do we need? Yeah, I was gonna say, do we need like Fall Out Boy's version of "We Didn't Start the Fire" for Forrest Gump of like the last 30 years now?
Yeah. I mean, he would obviously be involved in 9/11 somehow.
9/11. He would
COVID. He did COVID.
He definitely like outed where Osama was. He's just like, and I started to do some backpacking around the Middle East.
Right.
I found me a figure.
He definitely ends up in like Arcade Fire.
Yeah.
in like 2004.
Yeah, he gets them the winning of best album. He gets them album of the year.
He's involved in the Ukraine? Death of Ukraine.
Is he in Ukraine right
Navalny,
now?
He's involved with Navalny. He's probably involved with like the death of Princess Diana.
He definitely designs the Hope poster.
Yes.
The poster.
Yes.
Yeah. He designs the Mission Accomplished banner behind George Bush.
He creates r/advice animals.
He creates every website, Reddit, YouTube, Facebook.
He creates Neopets.
Club Penguin.
Did you guys so this can kind of transition into categories and everything. Zemeckis was not the first choice to direct this movie. Do you guys know who the first two choices were?
Wasn't Terry Gilliam in there?
Terry Gilliam was the first one.
Wow.
That they first went to make this movie.
I'll tell you what, that movie does not make $600 million and win
That
Best
movie
Picture.
Does not win Best Picture. Yeah, no, 100%.
Maybe it's better. I don't know. It could be better.
Terry Gilliam is one. And the other one, which I'm really fascinated by, who apparently originally signed on and then canceled, was Barry Sonnenfeld.
Okay.
Barry Sonnenfeld was going to make this movie, and then instead Adam's Family Values got greenlit, and he backed out of this at the last minute.
Okay.
And so then Bobby Z stepped up.
Would have been a little goofier. I mean, the Zemeckis energy in here is so magic because it's just snarky enough, but also like super warm and traditional and sincere. Like this movie is having a lot of fun, but it's also like it has a just enough like seriousness and gravitas to it to have like this kind of deeper layer. But it's not like you're analyzing this movie and like reading into it, but you are feeling it a lot, right? Like it's landing in a deeper way rather than just kind of like this bright poppy thing.
I think that originally, because this feeds into who was originally cast in the Forrest Gump role, thinking about Terry Gilliam and Barry Sonnenfeld being at the helms, the two original names that I kept seeing thrown around a lot were Bill Murray and Chevy Chase. So that's saying we're going full satire with this. Like we are stripping away a lot of that sensitivity that is in this movie and going full like satirizing and kind of poking fun at the history of America and all of that mess. The other name that I saw that apparently was heavily tied to this role before Hanks, because Hanks was not the first choice, was Sean Penn, which
I am Sam himself.
Thank God. That's all that I can say is that we didn't get Sean Penn as Forrest Gump.
Apparently,
that movie also isn't winning Best Picture.
Apparently, also John Travolta.
Yeah.
Wow. I didn't see that one. That's interesting.
Apparently, Travolta passed on the movie.
I would have enjoyed an alternate version where it's Travolta as Forrest Gump because
doing the voice.
Yeah, that would be that'd be rough. The same year as Pulp Fiction. He's back. Oh wait, no, he's not.
Oh no, he gumped himself.
I would see Travolta in a Terry Gilliam version of this movie. I think that could rock, honestly. I'd be worried that Bill Murray and Chevy Chase would be like too self-aware to the point that like maybe this movie might be fun, but it would not have even close to the same impact.
It would just turn into a Bill Murray movie or a Chevy Chase movie.
Exactly.
What Forrest Gump is. So
very true. Very true. Yeah, I mean, Ivan Reitman was also apparently in the mix for directing, and Penny Marshall, a Hank series.
Hey,
so,
okay.
You know, could have worked out a couple different ways.
Penny Marshall might be too sensitive to this. Like Penny Marshall might be swinging the other way too much.
So who do we think could play Gump? It's the hardest one we've ever done so far. Like this is the hardest.
I don't think anyone could, to be honest with you. I mean, like any of the ones mentioned, like if it was like a Travolta, it's just, I don't see it. I think that the magic of this movie,
so delicate.
Yeah, this is one of those movies that could like crumble you as an actor. Like it just absolutely
and it should.
Crushed.
It's just the balance he has to have in this movie between like laughing with him and laughing at him and still feeling him as like a deeply human character. Like that's I don't really know any, like I couldn't off top back then. I could see someone like Tim Robbins giving it a go, but he's not necessarily that funny. But he is very sellable as like a soulful, you know, like the soul. Like you got to watch fucking Shawshank, Ernest, and you'll get it. Like he really sells himself as like the heart of that, you know, experience.
Speaking of Tim Robbins, it's funny because I just recently watched The Player for the first time, and like Forrest Gump is like a movie that would be pitched in The Player as a fake movie. So it's funny that you bring up Tim Robbins as a figure. By the way, The Player, man, that's an incredible movie by Robert Altman. It's tough thinking about an actor in this time frame because I think that in the 90s, like especially right now, Tom Hanks has carved out this like really, really unique spot that there isn't really anybody else of this time that I think that could play Forrest Gump. If we were to make this more fluid, the timeline, Sandler is somebody who I think of. I think that Sandman could do something like this.
Doesn't win Best Picture though. That's the thing. Like it's a different version of the movie if it's Sandler.
What about late 90s Will Smith?
Oh man. If you put a black man in this role, it has the movie has to change. The movie has to change so much because this movie is to like it's a collapsed timeline of like all these major historical moments of the 20th century, and it's like you're just gonna gloss over.
Yeah, it's not gonna be like, great.
Is ML even mentioned in this movie? Is Malcolm X mentioned in this movie? Like you get the Black Panthers as a complete afterthought, but like the black experience, I would love to see the Black Forrest Gump. That would be, someone should make that movie. Maybe Jordan Peele can make that movie.
I have a terrible suggestion to who could have played Gump in 1994. John Cusack.
Oh no.
That Ernest sucks.
Ernest hates John Cusack. Ernest fucking hates John Cusack.
That might actually be.
We've been pitching a John Cusack series for years, and Ernest keeps fucking throwing that shit in the trash.
I think that would be the worst movie ever made.
It's
straight
John
up.
Cusack, but he doesn't do the accent. He doesn't even attempt an accent.
But it's like Gump has to be stupid. Like he has to be a dumb person, and
everyone stupid has an accent.
For any actor to attempt this is like whatever choice anyone would make, like voice or not. It's very likely not going to work out. That's the whole Tropic Thunder joke about Simple Jack.
Jack, yeah.
It is. It's also like he can't be hot, and he also can't be like super built, but he has to be like. Go ahead.
I thought about somebody, and it would still take some rewriting, obviously. But do we think that like, I don't even know where exactly he is in his life. Maybe we have to do like 1997 version of this guy and not 1994, but. Could Philip Seymour Hoffman do this?
Honestly, maybe.
I think that PSH
that man can do anything.
He could do well. One, he's incredible, but two, I think that he could kind of do a little bit of the simpleton, but also like bring a sensitivity to this because like Forrest Gump, we don't need him to do the sarcasm. Like that's kind of the thing where it's like. Inserting characters that are inherently funny, we don't want somebody who's necessarily going to do humor like in a classical kind of way. We want somebody who has a sense of humor, but like is able to do things kind of straight and be a little bit dopey. And I think PSH could do it.
I think that one of the biggest tests is just the idea of strangers sitting at this bench listening to this man talk about his entire life. It's like when you think about who the believability of like who would actually do that, who would actually engage with this person. And maybe this says a lot about America in 2024 and how much we've fallen that we don't even want to pay attention to our fellow man at the bus stop. But Tom Hanks is kind of the best case scenario of like guy that you would want to acknowledge and hear his ramblings. All these other guys, I don't know. I don't know if I would listen to PSH ramble on the bench. I'm not sure.
No, because he's like seconds away from pulling his cock out.
Exactly. This is it. This is the danger you run into.
If only.
The real, because it's the real.
Tommy.
I think the real answer to like who could have been considered and could have maybe pulled this off would be Robin Williams. The main problem is that
Jack himself.
The real problem is that you cannot de-age the man, and like you have to in this movie.
Yeah, he's always hairy. He was born a hairy baby. It's more like Benjamin Button. It's more of a Benjamin Button scenario. So it's Jack, and he's hairy, and it's about how he becomes less hairy.
I just think that if you put Robin Williams in this movie, though, it becomes a Robin Williams movie. I think that's like he can't help himself, but he's going to be doing like improv funny bits, and it's going to be funny.
Who would rock? But he just isn't. He doesn't like he doesn't sell out theaters. Is John C. Reilly.
John C. Reilly would be great, but I think again, it's like it's too comedic. 1994 John C. Reilly, the wrong kid, Dad.
He's a dramatic actor.
Make a parody.
I'm thinking of 94 though. 94 John C. Reilly. If we shift things around, it could go in there. I love John C. Reilly.
What about a man named Tom Cruise? Tom Swamp. Could he do it?
No. Literally impossible for him to do.
That's the real Mission Impossible, is him doing Forrest Gump. Here's the thing. I would be interested in it to see if we're doing like the Sean Penn style script of the dramatic telling of Forrest Gump. I want to see Tom Cruise do it, but in this version, this iteration, absolutely not.
If Cruise had done it, he would have like demanded like some prosthetic to like make him look like really dumb. And
no, I think Forrest Gump
or something.
He would get like a cross-eyed contact lens.
I think Forrest Gump needs to be like tall. Like he needs to be tall and big. Yeah. And like a lot of it is the physicality to it.
Again, it's the bench. If your feet are dangling from the bench,
Tom's kicking his little feet.
It's not going to work. Forrest has to have his feet firmly planted on the ground when he's sitting on that bench.
Dirty Nikes.
Okay, next category is run pee. What is the scene where you go to the bathroom during this movie, brought to you by Run Pee, the app that tells you when to go to the bathroom? Thank you for sponsoring this episode. What's the Run Pee scene?
Well, personally, when I was using Run Pee while rewatching Forrest Gump, it's right at the time he drinks like 16 Dr. Peppers. And it's
15
right
15
after
Dr.
John F.
Peppers.
Kennedy says he has to go pee.
That's when you go pee. Yeah, when he has to.
Yeah,
that's a perfect choice.
JFK is telling you, like, go pee.
Go right now. I think any of those interstitial like cutaways where Bobby Z's just flexing his technology of inserting Hanks into old historical footage, you can go pee during any of those. The movie is basically on pause already while we.
One slight issue that I still maintain with the movie is a lot of the time it folds in assassination footage that Forrest Gump is not even like at or near or involved in.
It's just to show people like, hey, remember you lived through this. Remember how hard it is to be you. A boomer.
Yeah. Remember how tough it is to be a boomer?
It just cuts to like an assassination that Forrest had like isn't even there at all. It's just like, hey, yeah, that guy ended up getting shot, and then it shows it, and it's like,
yeah, and I learned from that. That was like a history lesson. Teach me that in school. I learned.
That's the other big thing about this movie. It's like
John and his brother both got shot. What?
Whoa.
They don't teach you about Robert.
Two Kennedys? Yeah.
They don't teach you about the other guy. I already forgot his name. The candidate that, oh my God. I'm blanking on the name of the other political.
Isn't it Robert? Candidate. Isn't it
Robert
still
Kennedy.
Robert?
Yeah, there's another guy.
No.
There's like 4 Kennedys that have been assassinated.
Yeah, no, the one who's running is RFK Jr.
No.
Yeah.
No, I think I might be thinking of an assassination attempt. Like a guy got shot because they show Reagan getting shot, and then there's another guy.
Yeah, no, they show it's the governor of Alabama, Wallace.
Yes, that's the one.
Who he either gets assassinated or there's an
it's a failed attempt
to be that's what it is. If you're going to go pee at a certain point, I do think that it's right around the Watergate segment. Like
that's
maybe
when I went.
You see Watergate happens, and you're like, haha, I recognize that. But then it's like a cut to old makeup Sally Field, and then like Gump's getting the Jenny boat, and then like Jenny is like doing heroin and about to kill herself. And there's like a little bit of a chunk there where you're like, I got like a good 2.5 minutes here. I can just go like run to the bathroom real quick. We're good. Yeah, I won't miss much.
Yeah, we're fine.
Well, there you have it, folks. This segment, of course, brought to you by Run Pee. Run Pee, Forrest. Run Pee.
There you go. Yeah,
that's good. Okay, next category is what's your favorite scene in the film? A lot of great scenes. I think it's hard not to pick something in the ending. With all the stuff we already talked about, with just Hanks just delivering the goods, essentially meeting his son. It's hard. I mean, there's so many little bits,
it's kind of
sequences.
It's kind of a movie of scenes. Like of
little tiny things too,
of little moments and things like that. We barely talked about the ping pong and stuff like that. One of my favorite little Hanks bits is that somebody tells him early on, like, keep your eye on the ball whenever you're playing. And then from that moment on, anytime he's playing ping pong, he never blinks. That's just like a fun little character thing with Hanks that he does. I think my favorite scene is the Nam shed. Like, it's only like 5-10 minutes of the movie, and I just think it rules. It feels like it's so much larger whenever you aren't actually watching the movie because of just how much like weight it has on everything and how well done it is.
I really like the boat stuff with Lieutenant Dan. I don't know. It's hard to pick like a favorite one. And if I had to, I mean, it's Hanks meeting his son. Like, that's the one. But then there's so many other little things that I love. I love the running. Any moment of just seeing Gary Sinise in this movie, I think rocks. Like, just watching him cook with no legs is very, very memorable. What about you guys? Any other things to shout out?
I have something that I'd like to share. So, kind of like Hunter said, this movie is just scene after scene after scene after scene. Amazing. Something noteworthy, some classic line. So I'm going to share the one scene that I fucking hate. And it's when young Forrest gets on the bus and all the kids are like, you can't sit here. I hate all of those kids. They suck.
Yeah, did you know tough. That another thing I saw in trivia is that the first kid that it shows is Robert Zemeckis' kid. He's like, he like waves his hand. He's like, you can't sit here. That's Bobby Z's son himself.
Wow.
Yeah, it's just weird.
Beat that kid's ass.
It's a weird scene. It's strange.
Any other?
Like, I remember the first time I heard that voice.
Any other favorite scenes to shout out? Most iconic moment is the next one. I think you got to shout out the opening with the feather and life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get on the bench. Like, iconic. I feel like just that image, Hunter has it as his background, that image of him sitting on the bench, like, that has to be the most iconic thing about this
But also
movie.
your background, Ernest.
Yeah, just him with the long hair running with in the desert. There's a lot. I mean, him talking to the crowd at in Washington D.C., giving the speech. I think that's pretty iconic. There's
him as a kid running his braces off.
Oh, yes. Thanks for shouting that out. That's a moment where the movie kind of like clicks up a gear a little bit. It's like ramping up the beginning. We're kind of ramping up to that point. And when then that happens,
you hear "Run, Forrest, Run," and all the braces, the CG of them falling off in like the most satisfying way. It still works.
It's fun. It's a lot of fun. I was gonna ask, because I know we've kind of retired the best quote, but like, this is one of the most quotable movies that we have like ever talked about on this podcast. Of like, what is the best quote or the most memorable quote? Is it "Run, Forrest, Run"? Is it "Life is like a box of chocolates"? Is it "And it's all I gotta say about that"? Is it "Stupid is as stupid does"? Like, there's so many that it's kind of
probably "Box of Chocolates."
"Run, Forrest, Run" is crazy though.
Yeah, I'd say "Run, Forrest, Run."
That gets used more in like daily life.
Yeah. Like, whenever anyone's running, some jackass is like, "Run, Forrest, run."
There's always one guy.
Low-key favorite of mine is when Lieutenant Dan is like, "I want to get my sea legs," and Forrest is like, "But you ain't got no legs, Lieutenant Dan."
That's a great one.
That's so good.
So good.
That's
the little lines like that are the best. That's what makes the script work.
That's the thing about this movie is like, you kind of have to set aside the entire stupid argument of like whether or not this movie is good and people trying to have this huge debate over like the legacy of this movie. This is a movie that has been absorbed into the culture forever. And it's like, it doesn't matter whether it's good or not. Like, it is ubiquitous. There are so many things that are just burned permanently forever.
The people have spoken.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It was absorbed into the culture literally the day before I was born.
You know, Collin, it's funny because after you did that, I looked up what was the top release movie
me
on the
too.
year that I was born. It's much more lame. Instead, I got the Lawrence Kasdan film French Kiss. So
the fuck is
not
that?
a lot of.
I don't even know what
not
that
a lot
is.
of.
I got
It's a Meg
Major
Ryan
League.
film.
That's not
a good
bad.
one.
I got the Michael Crichton adaptation Congo.
Wow.
Oh, okay. I will say the song that was number one on the year it was released. This Is How We Do It by Montel Jordan. So that's kind of a banger.
Oh wait,
I'll take
sorry.
that.
I got Major League 2. Major League 2.
So that's much worse.
And then number 2 at the box office is D2 The Mighty Ducks. This was a rough one. April is tough, guys. April is really, really tough.
Yeah.
So
early
I'm
April
absolutely in
too.
the
That's not great.
pantheon of like number one like box office weekend births. Like, how do you top Forrest Gump?
Yeah.
We're the Godfather babies out there. Come rival me. Come rival me.
I don't think this movie was absorbed into the culture immediately. I feel like by the time, I don't know, do you think that by the time it won the Oscar, it was already like everyone had seen this movie?
Everyone had this on VHS.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say it had an incredible home release. It was huge on cable. Like, that's why I think that I've seen this movie 100 times, is because this is something that was on.
It's just on.
Yes, it was on TNT. It was on like all of these networks just all the time. And again, home release. It's a thing where it's just like your grandparents will put this movie on.
Yeah,
your
major crossover appeal.
You could put this on at like a summer camp or something. Like, it could just be put on at anything it's funny because of like all of the dark undertones and like everything that's going on with
some of the
Jenny
dirty
and
jokes,
like all the shit like that's happening here. But like it's so watered down in a way that like the kids aren't picking up on like, oh, Jenny was definitely sexually abused by her father. Like, no child is picking up on those things.
Brutal.
So you could just
they are picking up on the heroin though. They're
picking up on that.
Yeah.
They're picking up.
They're like, is that AIDS?
Oh, the unnamed.
Is Jenny dying
mysterious?
of AIDS? No, instead they're just like, man, you know, sometimes there really is just never enough rocks. Just not getting what they mean on that.
You are right though about this kind of the crossover appeal of it. It's so ubiquitous. Like, you know, there aren't many movies that you could put on in front of almost any audience. You know, I think about this a lot of times when I'm hanging out with my parents and my mom is like, put something on, put a movie on. And I'm just like, well, it's going to be difficult to find something that like what the vibe is.
You're like, got it. Titan.
We're going to
put on a movie where a woman fucks a car.
You can't just
like,
put on. You know, it's like most of the movies that I enjoy aren't going to be something that like my parents would necessarily enjoy. And it's like a movie like Forrest Gump is very needed in the culture because it's easy. You can throw it on for anybody. It doesn't matter. You're gonna enjoy this.
It's multi-generational. It appeals to mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, Colin, Drew, Hunter, Ernest.
How does Generation Alpha feel about Forrest Gump though? Can we get some children in here to watch Forrest Gump?
They're a little busy living out their own Forrest Gump historical events at the moment.
If we put on Subway Surfers next to the screen that plays Forrest Gump, what will they think about Forrest Gump is my question.
I don't think Gen Z likes this movie very much, but I have a feeling they relate to when Forrest nuts pretty much.
Right. They're gooning.
No,
right.
Gen Z is gooning. They're like, that would never be me.
They're like, I can't come.
What would you do, fellas?
Oh my God. Who are we in this scenario?
You lose your legs. You mean to die in battle.
Oh, so we're Lieutenant Dan. That's who we are in this.
Oh, I mean, it's just so easy to kill yourself.
Yeah, I was gonna say I would just kill myself. Are you kidding?
Yeah.
I would just here's the thing. So that I could tell myself that I died in war, I would hitch a ride back to the war zone. And then I would just limp my ass out there and die immediately. So that I can just tell myself I died on the field of combat.
If I was Forrest, I would it's tough to say, but did he do everything right?
Here's the thing. If I'm Jenny, I'm not going back to Forrest. And I think that makes me a good person.
Mm-hmm. Do you still die of AIDS? Or
yeah, I'm dying of AIDS right now.
That kid, but your kid, she's being immoral to secure a better life for her son.
I really have a lot of questions. I feel like we could have grilled a lot more into Jenny as a character in this because, is Jenny a bad person? Is something?
I think that part of the Jenny character is the movie is trying to be critical of the ways in which America failed.
Yeah,
that generation, right? It's
more of a problem with the way that Jenny as a character is written than it is with her specifically. But it's just Well,
the issue is
girly, we all got traumas.
The movie's not about Jenny, right? And you only get so much from her. It ends up being pretty superficial by the end. You don't really engage with that stuff too much. And it's so, subtle enough that most people kind of just graze over and they just see it as oh yeah, that's just another thing that happened that happened to some people, right? That they lived these more intense lives. Or made these more extreme decisions or whatever. But I think it's also the movie saying hey, this was the reality for a lot of people this time. It wasn't as kind of bright and colorful and rosy as we want to remember it. I think that the main focus of a lot of this movie is to try to remember this time as being, a little bit more palatable than it really was, but it's also not shying away from some of the horrors, right? It's not a totally beautiful sanitized package. It's what I was saying before. It's kind of both. It gives you the easy to digest version with a little bit of the more intense version. And Jenny has to be that.
I think Jenny, deep down, she does love Forrest, but the major issue is that he doesn't want to leave Alabama, and that's the last place she ever wants to be. And that's
why to sit at that house.
Yeah. Forrest is still at that house, and her shotgun shack is still there. She doesn't want to relive any of that. And Forrest is no, we're fucking staying at my manor. We're staying.
That is probably, you're right, because actually, is Jenny smart? Is her IQ
That's
80?
true. Yeah.
The scene where she leaves him in the middle of the night, I was like, man.
Is there a single intelligent
jerk
person in this movie? Is the question.
Well, I don't know. Maybe this movie, maybe part of the point is that
it's a comment. That's the true commentary on
America. If you're a true American, you're a little stupid.
Yeah.
Well, fellas, what do? You're waiting for a bus, and Forrest is there, and he's just talking about his life story, and he's occasionally making eye contact with you. So you're he's telling it to me.
Well, first of all,
you had a good tweet that was exactly summed up how I'm reacting to Forrest.
Yeah, I'd have my fucking AirPods in, and I'd be like, sorry, brother, nothing on me.
Because anytime that somebody tries to talk to me in public, I'm like, no, thank you, and just turn away.
I probably wouldn't sit on the bench, to be honest. I would stand nearby.
You see a person sitting on a bench, you're not joining them. You're like, that is his bench now. He got here first. What am I going to do? Sit on the other side of him? Or are we going to get married next or something?
I'll just stand. The bus is probably going to be 15 minutes? Yeah, I can stand for 15 minutes.
I'm assuming that it's about 2 to 2.5 hours in between buses based on what is happening in this movie.
We change audiences about 2 or 3 times, so.
I would actually, the thing is, I would very politely listen to what he's saying, and I would end up being entertained, and I'd be like, oh, bull, you know what I mean? I'd be like, no way, you know, and he'd be like,
You'd
"No,
be
yeah,
the guy
for
who
real."
leaves halfway through. It's just like, that's crazy. Anyways, and just
Yeah,
leaves.
yeah, exactly. I'd be like, "Wow, that's wild." Well, it's been great talking to you, man. I have to go now.
I would humor him. You guys sound like the villains in a Darman video. And I'm the only one who like listens to him, and at the end he's like, and that's why I'm handing over Bubba Gump to you.
Oh, it's like a Charlie and the Chocolate Factory
Yeah.
situation.
They didn't listen to him because they thought he was dumb. He showed them ... That's what the Darman video says.
That's how you win.
But you have to start from the very beginning. You have to be there from the moment that feather hits his shoe. You have to be seated, and you cannot get up the entire time.
I'm telling him like midway through, I'm being like, it sounds like Jenny's a bitch.
I would say like, Forrest, you're too good for Jenny.
I would say thank you for your service, sir, and walk away.
It was another great gag when he busted out the Fortune magazine to show that lady. I thought that was really funny.
Oh yeah, every photo of Forrest, his eyes are closed.
Yeah, that's a good little bit. Every photograph of him, closed eyes.
Amazing dumb guy. Heck.
All right, next category is we're scoring the hanksiness of the film out of 5. What is it? Is it a mix of like the silliness with the riz, with the charisma? I think in this movie, you know, the voice factors into this a lot. Just the entire embodiment of this character. It's still up there. You know, I think Forrest is a very lovable character, and I think a lot of it is because of the hanksiness. Go 4 out of 5.
I'm giving it 5 out of 5.
Yeah, this is pure like.
I think that this is like the reason why we're having difficulty figuring out who could recast as Tom Hanks is because
no one could.
Like, it's like the most Hanks. Five Hanks out of Hanks.
I agree.
Yeah, you gotta.
Yeah, I think like this and
I'll go 4.5.
Where I'm like, this is a 5. This is a 5 Hanks.
Final category is recaging and re-Robin Couch. Where are Robin Williams and Nick Cage in this movie?
I don't want to lose Mykelti Williamson. What if Nicolas Cage was Bubba? Could we have Nick Cage as Bubba?
That'd be great. I mean, Cage as Lieutenant Dan would be great, but then you lose Sinise, who's also great.
Yeah, we're gonna give up something because at first I was like, can we like put Cage in as like
he's
the other drill sergeant or something? But like, I want Cage in the seams of this movie.
He's Jenny's abusive boyfriend.
Okay.
Do you think Cage actually hits Robin Wright in real life just to like get method?
Yeah, and he yogurts in his pants.
What if Cage is? I have a train of thought here. Cage is. Damn, there's not that many characters in this movie.
Yeah, unless you pick like a historical figure, like Cage is John Lennon. That would make any sense.
Cage is the guy who shouts the F word via effing Nam. That's Cage.
It's just one little cutaway to him.
It's not that like. Considering where Cage was at in the mid 90s, it's not crazy to imagine him being Forrest Gump.
Right. No, that's facts.
Yeah, we didn't even consider that.
Nicolas Cage's Forrest Gump is
he's doing his best. That's Family
not
Man.
The worst choice. Like honestly, that is
he would
not the
fully
worst
commit.
Choice.
Like he would absolutely commit.
He would do a voice.
He'd do a voice.
Yep.
He has the physicality, the tall, lanky.
Yeah.
He would give it that emotional weight.
This is what 2 years before he wins the Oscar. Is that 96?
Did he already win it?
Or is it 95?
96. No, you might be right.
96. Okay, nice. Yeah. And it's like it's right around this range.
And then Robin, you could throw him into the rally in DC.
Robin's almost tougher than Cage on where to insert him in this movie.
Ooh, I got it. Instead of Mama Gump, it's Papa Gump.
And it's
we have Old Man Robin.
And it's Robin.
And he's
Papa always said.
Yeah, that's a huge paradigm shift, but I think that's where you put
I want to see Robin Williams fuck the principal. I want to see how
that's not bad. That's not bad. All right. Any final thoughts on Forrest Gump? Anything we haven't touched on? Final thoughts on Hanks, Collin? Anything before we wrap up?
Like I said at the beginning, me and Gump, we go way back. And the movie just holds a special place in my heart. And there's a lot of people who really love it. A lot of people who really enjoy it. A lot of people who don't enjoy the magic as much as I do. But it's a modern day classic.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's
30 years old this year.
That's all you have to say about that.
That's all I gotta say about that. I can't get the voice. I can't get it.
And that's all I got to say about that.
No, you sound like an old man.
See, whenever I try and do a Southern accent, because it comes out Georgian is the problem. Like my Southern accent is doing a Georgia Southern accent.
Yeah, but what's the difference?
Really? Don't you, Ernest? I swear to God, you're going to alienate some people by saying that. Alabama, you got to kind of hold out things a little bit more.
Jenny.
Like that's how you got to do it. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
One last observation. We don't see Forrest cry until the very end when Jenny dies. We don't see him cry when Bubba dies or his mom. He almost cries when he sees his kids, but he only cries when Jenny dies. And Forrest has the emotional intelligence at this point to tear down Jenny's house. I don't think Forrest would have even considered that before her death.
I do really love that scene where he takes Jenny to her old house and everything. That's where you get the line of like, sometimes there's never enough rocks, when she's throwing the rocks and everything. And that's one of those moments where it's like Gump can feel like Gump is empathizing with her, even if he's not understanding. Like Forrest definitely doesn't understand the trauma that Jenny went through, but he is still able to at least empathize with her feelings.
Yeah, he's not a sociopath. He gets it.
He gets
all right. Well, that's Forrest Gump. Thank you so much, Collin, for coming on the show. Is there anything you want to let the people know? Any bragging rights you want to flex with your victory over all of us on the Fantasy Film League?
Yeah, absolutely. I won the summer movie wager. I won the Fantasy Film League. And then at my local AMC the same week, I won the Oscar ballot.
Amazing.
So I've just been like fucking
riding high,
dunking on you fools.
Do you want to? I'm going to give a special shout out to Christopher Nolan. Do you want to thank Christopher Nolan specifically for your wins?
Yeah, I will never draft another movie as strong as Oppenheimer ever again. And I don't think I'm going to do that great this year with this Fantasy Film League, but I'll have that run that I had.
It was a magnificent victory. Congratulations. You selected Terminator 2 Judgment Day as your winning movie for all the losers to watch, which is a great pick, a mercy pick. I love that movie. So we may do a bonus episode at some point later down the road where we have you back to talk about that movie.
I would love to talk Terminator 2.
Have you ever seen Terminator 2, Drew?
Yeah, it fucking rules.
Okay, good. Good. Just checking.
Hey, Forrest Gump, Schwarzenegger. There's a lot of accent overlap.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it could work.
Absolutely.
I like that idea a lot. They could have gotten Schwarzenegger to do it.
Schwarzenegger as Gump would be fun.
Wins an Oscar.
Once again, so that movie might
they don't question like they don't address like his appearance or the way he talks at all.
I was born in Alabama.
He's not a returner. He's like a middle linebacker now in this version of the story, and he's just like killing every quarterback in every single play.
That's the only change they make. It's exactly the same movie. He can't walk. All right. Well, thank you all for listening. Please rate, review, subscribe, like, comment, let us know your thoughts. Check out weboughtamic.net to get every episode in your inbox. Join the Discord, donate. thank you all the beautiful donors for donating over at patreon.com/weboughtamic. Next week, it's Apollo 13. Apollo 13, a Ron Howard film. As we continue with our Hanks series. And in terms of new releases, I know, Hunter, you've been in a deep dive of catch up, but I don't know. We could do a Challengers deep dive, but it's going to be a light summer, so we'll be able to knock out a lot of these toms for the foreseeable future.
We fucking better.
I don't think there's anything major coming out for a while.
The people have been clamoring for us to start the John Cusack watch through. So we gotta wrap this one up so we can get to the good shit.
It's the halfway point. Like we're rounding the corner. Okay. So thanks again, Collin.
We'll
see you next time. Bye.
Thanks.
Bye.
Jump forever.